Are you ready for some New Year's Eve racing? It's a possibility. The RTA, that's the Racing Team Alliance, is threatening NASCAR to hold some non-sanctioned events, and we could have some racing on New Year's Eve. That would be pretty damn cool. Their beef with NASCAR is over money. There is an $800 million contract, TV contract that they currently have, and the breakdown goes 10% to NASCAR, 25% to the Cup team owners, and 65% to the tracks. So the 10% that goes to NASCAR, when they have 1,300 employees or so, and the average salary is around $40,000, that pretty much eats up the entire $80 million. That's what basically they figured out the racing budget is to cover all expenses for every single season. Now the 65% that goes to the tracks, that's a grift. Have you caught how it's a grift? It's a grift. Take a look at it and see if you can tell me how. For now, I want to talk about the New Year's Eve race that I would love to see. Here's how it's going to look. We do 100 laps first, going around the red line, the outside of the track, and we run this on ice. Yes, ice. I saw an article a little while ago that talked about NASCAR wanting to have an exhibition on ice. This is the time to do it. It's going to be December 31st. We can hold it somewhere north, like Wisconsin or maybe even Canada. They do like to go to different countries. So we put it up there, first 100 laps on ice. Then the next 50 laps, we turn the racetrack into a figure eight. Can you imagine those guys trying to do a figure eight track on ice? It makes me giddy just thinking about it. That would be so fun to see. And it would be a lot of carnage. And if they can do it, it'd be great. But in case there's still some survivors after that, we then get a bunch of jersey walls, put it up around the track in the infield center, and make a demolition derby field. We line the cars up on opposite ends of the track, and we just let them have at it. They are not allowed to use any kind of point system. So instead of using a point system, we use an elimination. And there can be only one. So, I told you before there's a grift. Have you caught the grift yet? Let's take a look at it. First we got the ISC, International Speedway Corp. That's owned by NASCAR. Next we got the SMI, Speedway Motorsports Inc. That's Bruton Smith's company. Between the two of them, these days they pretty much own every single track in NASCAR. And they're both publicly traded stocks. So, you might be asking yourself, where is the grift? NASCAR pays 65% of the TV contract to the tracks. 65%. The tracks should be the least feature of the NASCAR series. NASCAR has boasted in the past they can take a race anywhere in the world and fill up the stands. Does that sound like they're beholden to tracks? No, they shouldn't be. The tracks are where you pay money, that's the house money, that you don't like to pay, that you have to pay because you need the arena, event, field, stadium, whatever you're using. It's not the people you supplement the most. They figured out that first, we'll take out the actual operating budget, which is the 10%. Then they said we'll give the teams $200 million. And that's a nice chunk, but as time goes on, inflation goes on, that $200 million has gotten less and less. So when they're giving the tracks $65 million, let's take a look at the math real quick. Out to $14,444,444. To the tracks? Are they crazy? Why on earth would you be paying tracks so much money? That would be as crazy as rock and roll bands paying the house 65% of the money when a wrestling show comes through. Do you think they want to pay the arenas they're in 65%? No, they do everything they can to get as low as possible. 10, 15%. Earnhardt, a few years ago, he got into a battle with the memorabilia sales. They wanted 25%. He wanted to pay him 15%. The Colonel kept Elvis under lock and key because he was charging so much money. He was probably charging 65%. That's probably what he's charging Elvis. That kept Elvis locked up. When monster trucks come through, do you think monster trucks offer the house 65% of the gate? No. They're all trying to keep this money. There is no reason to give away that much money unless there's a grift to it. When they give the money to the tracks, it looks like it's an operating cost. Like, hey, these tracks need it. But what do we all pay ticket prices for? That's what the money should be. The track should take home is ticket prices, concessions, and a piece of memorabilia. They don't get this whole separate funds paying right to them. This should all go to NASCAR. If NASCAR keeps the money they should, it should be broken up between two phases. NASCAR getting 75% and teams getting 25%, which would be $600 million to $200 million. When you look at it that way, then all of a sudden you see the misbalance. The cup operators, they should be getting $350, $400 million of it. The tracks, if you wanted to give them anything, like, okay, so they are hosting your cup event, and you give them a little taste, then you give them 10% worth of money. You don't make them the largest funded out there. You give them a little taste to basically be a thank you. For smaller tracks like Martinsville, how does Martinsville compete with Daytona? Martinsville has 65,000 seating capacity. Daytona, 180,000 people. So naturally, Daytona is going to make more money than Martinsville because of just how many seats are there, how many people are there. Each person there getting a T-shirt and buying a soda and a hot dog. So you would thank Martinsville by giving them a little taste. And that's totally fine. I mean, this is actually what kept all the tracks alive during COVID. You remember the races that were held with no fans in the stands? I was wondering at that time, how can they run these races without any people in the stands? Where are they going to get the money from? Once you see this and they're getting paid $14 million a race, man, they were floating high. They were floating high. They might not have had the people to get the extra income, but they were still making $14 million a race. The Darlington had 3 races. 3 races, 14 times 3, $42 million. Somewhere in there, whatever it is. They made an ungodly sum of money that year. So when you sit there, and I also just told you that they're a stock company. Okay? They're not traded like the way you think other businesses are. The guys that are in control have them locked up for the most part. I drew a little thing here. Now, this is just guessing. I don't actually know it. But this is probably how it goes. This is NASCAR's company, ISC. They probably owe it up to 80%. And frankly, Bruton probably owns 18%. And then there's a little itty-bitty here that's in trade. And you look over here at Bruton's company. Bruton probably owns 80%. And NASCAR probably owns 18%. And then there's that little itty bit that's actually out there for trade. If you got a lot of money, just go out there and check and see if you can go buy 1 million shares of either of these companies. You're most likely going to be told that they're not even for sale. Even though their prices are going to be like $100 a stock, if nobody's selling them, where are you going to get them from? And these guys have them locked up, they're sitting on them, and they both said, let's just give a little, well, we got to give a little out so we don't look like a monopoly, so people can actually buy it when they go looking for it. Like, I could buy one, but I can't go buy a significant share amount. They ain't going to allow it. They got it locked up too much. So when NASCAR pays each company $14 million, they're grifting. They're really just handing the money back to themselves. Yeah, they got to pay taxes on it. That's a nuisance. But what they're really doing is keeping the money from the cup owners. When it's broken up to paying the track 65%, that makes the cup owners look like they're greedy when they're going for more. But you don't pay tracks the bulk of your money. It's insane. I don't know how anybody else doesn't see this. If you think this is fair, man, you got a lot to learn about how business works. NASCAR should always want to be keeping the biggest cut of funds. Doesn't that make sense? NASCAR, the organization, wants to keep the biggest cut. Instead, they're only giving themselves 10%, and it's only operating costs. I mean, just look at the employees. It almost takes up the full $80 million. And they do have to buy a few other things, you know, the tracking system they use during the race and everything. So why would they be so easily coaxed into giving all the rest of that money away? Because they're feeding it back to themselves. They're feeding it back to themselves. They're feeding it to Bruton. Even when they pay Bruton, they get a slice of the cut over here. When they get their slice, Bruton gets his cut. Bruton's been a loyalist to NASCAR. He's been around his entire life, helping NASCAR get paid, get big, get bigger. The Charlotte, all these tracks. That's why he bought them all up. He is a great racing fan. But I had no idea he was robbing us like the way he is. This is absolutely absurd. It's a total grift. NASCAR is using paying the tracks as an excuse not to pay the Cup guys more. The Cup guys, they should be making, I'm guessing, approximately $400 million. They should be doubled what they're actually getting. Maybe they only get $350 million because you want to take the operating costs out too and split it up the profits between you. So they only get $350 million. The fact you're only giving them $200 million, yeah, you're really lowballing them. So there you have it. That is NASCAR's biggest grift going, and it's all perfectly legal. But once you tear down the facade of what's really happening, that it is a grift, they are backdoor paying themselves to not have to pay the Cup teams more. Doing it the way they're doing, they're saving the 150 to 200 million they're not giving the Cup teams. That's why they do it that way. You know, they're paying taxes. It's only 10-15% doing it. But if they pay the other teams, that's 150 to 200 million. There you have it laid out. I hope you enjoyed this segment. I hope it informed you. Please give my video a like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time.